This has been a very difficult year, and Victorians have given a lot, and I'm proud of every single one of them.
Tonight, Melbourne begins its return to normal life, the lockdown now officially over, and businesses reopening. We'll have special coverage this evening. Also, America gets ready to decide whether it'll be 4 more years of Donald Trump or whether Joe Biden will be the country's next president, but there's concern we may not actually know the results for days. We'll also be previewing what our coverage will look like. 3 people killed, 1 beheaded in an apparent terrorist attack on the streets of Nice in France, and V-Line's chief executive sacked amid IBAC investigations into alleged corruption at the regional train network. Good evening, it is just past 7:45pm here in Melbourne. Thanks for your company on this Sunday evening. We are back in our Richmond headquarters after months of broadcasting from home. Now there's a lot to get through tonight, but we are going to begin with businesses finally reopening across Melbourne after the city's stage 4 lockdown ended after more than 100 days. Normal life is slowly returning, with Melburnians wasting no time in once again getting out and about. Reporter Lincoln Holmes begins our coverage.
Just last week, the news that hundreds of Victorians were hoping for.
I am very pleased to be able to announce that from 11:59pm, Tuesday the 27th of October, all retail will open.
The news that Victoria's coronavirus restrictions were going to be eased came fast and hard for Victorians.
This has been a very difficult year, and Victorians have given a lot, and I'm proud of every single one of them.
But if we've learned anything, the virus doesn't go away without a fight.
We are all in this together, and just as we've stayed the course, and yes, we've stayed apart, but remained fundamentally connected as a strong and united state, we have to be vigilant in the weeks and months to come.
With the easing of restrictions, Victorians have also enjoyed being able to have a meal and a drink at a pub, obviously with coronavirus guidelines.
Feels pretty special to sit in a chair that isn't in my house.
Mate, I've been frothing for a cold schooner for near enough to 5 months now.
Guidelines such as social distancing and also face coverings when not eating or drinking. In the next round of easing restrictions come November 8th, the regional Victorian and metropolitan Melbourne border will come to an end, meaning there'll be no Little River checkpoint.
We all need to be very careful about how we safeguard this precious thing that we have built as a Victorian community, because we've stayed the course, because we haven't been pushed by the loudest voices into making irresponsible choices.
But one thing that is for sure, Victorians are just happy to be opening up at a safe pace. Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
And there have been massive queues at shopping centres across Melbourne, with people rushing to purchase items they couldn't get online. Let's go straight to our senior reporter Darby Travers, who's standing by for us live. Darby, people even lined the streets to get in.
Yeah, good evening, Leo. Hundreds of people have been seen lining outside shopping centres. Of course, it's the first time we have been allowed inside stores since August. Click and collect services have been available throughout the pandemic, but for many, there is just no substitute for browsing discount home goods. The state government says these changes will allow more than 600 retail stores, 1,000 beauty salons, and 800 pubs to reopen, impacting more than 180,000 jobs. But with more people now out and about, it has become clear that many retail outlets and eateries did not survive the lockdown. The news of the end of the lockdown has been seen right across the world, with several news outlets reporting it is a world success. But no doubt, Leo, many Melburnians just happy to be out and about.
Right, Darby Travers live for us in Melbourne tonight. Thank you. To other news tonight, and the US election is just days away, with an 88% chance that Joe Biden will become the country's next president, according to most polls. But what really are the key issues that will be the deciding factor in the race for the White House? Chief reporter Jack Hahn explains.
Fighter jets and flares greet the president.
Oh, look at that. They gave the president a little display.
as his support nosedives in the polls. Last week, a poll from the crucial swing state of Wisconsin showed Joe Biden ahead by more than 17 points.
We had one little upset this morning. We're doing very well in Wisconsin.
The current national average has Trump's competitor ahead by 10.
But, and I'll say that repeatedly because we all lived through 2016. Can Donald Trump pull it off again? Yes, he can.
And President Trump is banking on the same type of upset win.
Our poll numbers are looking very good.
Polls aside, the president has been pouncing on Joe Biden.
What a mess. No, he called me George. I don't know if I should be insulted or happy about it.
And the character of the country, in my view, is literally on the ballot. What kind of country we're going to be. 4 more years of George, we're going to find ourselves in a position where if Trump gets elected, we're going to be in a different world.
All this while the pandemic has begun to paralyse the Midwest, with COVID cases climbing to the highest ever since the beginning of the pandemic. With hospitalisations surging, the president has continued to claim that the people are sick of the COVID coverage.
It's COVID. You can't watch anything else. On November 4th, you won't be hearing so much about it.
What's his closing argument? That people are too focused on COVID. He said this at one of his rallies. COVID, he's complaining. He's jealous of COVID's media coverage.
But his supporters have been getting sick, quite literally, with reports of hypothermia and heat stroke at his rallies.
Is there any place you would rather be than a Trump rally on about a 10-degree evening? 10 degrees.
You've got a lot of elderly there waiting to get picked off, and that's the concern. You're going to have people dropping like flies like they have been.
Rallies which the Trump team think are crucial in gaining support and turning out votes. With around 70 million Americans already voting in the election, the focus is now turned to the key demographics which will shape or swing the nature of the race.
You see that the gap has almost completely vanished from 2016 when white voters without a college degree had a 9-point advantage over white voters with a college degree and Latinos. So really, we're seeing a big change here, and President Trump's base is really shrinking.
And Leo, what we do know is that next Wednesday will come down to the suburbs, in particular women voters. At this stage, polls suggest that women voters favour Joe Biden. But what we do know is that without the women demographic, you will not become president. It will just be a matter of time to see who they vote for on Wednesday. Leo.
All right, Chief Reporter Jack Hunt, live for us tonight. Thank you. And one major concern is that we may not know the results of the US election on the night, and that it could even take weeks. Now, even once the early and in-person ballots are counted, a significant number of votes could still be outstanding. Only 8 out of 50 states expect to have at least 98% of the unofficial results reported by midday the day after the election, local time that is. 22 states and the District of Columbia do allow postmarked ballots to arrive after Election Day, so the timing will depend on when voters return them. New York and Alaska will not report any mail votes on election night. The order in which different types of votes are reported could also make one party look stronger at various points in the nights. Now, for example, the New York Times reports that Democrats are more likely to vote by mail this year, so in states where these will be the first types of ballots released, like Arizona, Florida, and North Carolina, initial results could skew in favour of Joe Biden. We'll continue to update you when states release more information. And 6 News will also be doing hours of live coverage for the US election, all kicking off at 10 a.m. with a special edition of 6 News as polls begin to close across the states. Then we'll have a bit of a preview of our coverage with myself on our Instagram page. That'll be live. Jack Hahn will take over from 1 p.m. and then we'll begin to co-anchor as more results come in throughout the afternoon and the evening. So stay tuned. And just a reminder that all times I did list are in Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So check your local clocks to see when it starts for you. 3 people have died in a terrorist attack at a church in the French city of Nice in what President Emmanuel Macron described as a terrorist attack. Officials say one elderly victim was virtually beheaded, and then another woman and a man also died A male suspect was shot and detained before being placed under police guard in hospital. The attack was the third in 2 months in France that authorities attributed to Muslim extremists, coming amid growing tensions over caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad that were republished in recent months by the satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo, renewing heated debate in France and the Muslim world over depictions that Muslims do consider offensive but are protected by French free speech laws. Scott Morrison has condemned inflammatory remarks by the former Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad in the wake of the terrorist attack. One tweet from Mr. Mohammed saying that Muslims have a right to be angry and kill millions of French people for massacres of the past. Then a post that was later taken down by Twitter. The attack in Nice came less than 2 weeks after a teacher was beheaded after reportedly showing a cartoon depicting the Prophet Muhammad. V-Line has sacked Chief James Pinder amid allegations stemming from a corruption investigation. Victoria's regional transport network will now rip up the deal of its cleaning contractor amid allegations of misconduct and corruption. The move coming as the independent broad-based anti-corruption commission heard that Melbourne's trains may not have been cleaned properly during its first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Pinder is alleged to have pocketed $320,000, including $100,000 loan for the deposit on his Williamstown home to further the interests of TransClean. The state's public transport minister Ben Carroll supported V-Line's decision and did say that the Victorian government was committed to upholding the highest standards of integrity. At least 3 people have died and millions are without power after post-tropical cyclone Zeta battered the US southern states. The storm has claimed at least 3 lives, including 1 person dying after a tree fell on a mobile home in Georgia and 1 person in Louisiana who was electrocuted by a drowned wire. The fallout from Zeta could create problems for early voters in the affected areas, with some locations being forced to close but are expected to reopen or already have. Students doing remote learning are being urged not to worry with power down across states, right across the southern states. That includes Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, and South Carolina, according to a count by NBC News. Back home now, and Deputy PM Michael McCormack has defended his decision to waive thousands of dollars in aviation fees for private jets. Labor has this week grilled Mr. McCormack over the support for the aviation industry, which it says has given concessions to billionaire Clive Palmer to fly around in luxury jets. The line of attack follows new documents that released during estimates on Tuesday showing that Mr. Palmer's company had just over $40,000 in air service charges waived under a support package for struggling airlines. Meanwhile, Royal Flying Doctor Services in South Australia, Western Australia, New South Wales and Queensland did have more than $1.2 million of combined air service charges waived, but the Deputy PM has backed his aviation support package, saying it did not discriminate. The Nationals are calling for a boycott of ANZ over the bank's plan for net zero emissions. ANZ's new emissions policy aims to support efforts to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050, but not net zero gas or oil by 2050, with significant steps to be taken before the 2020 financial year to shape the bank's operations until at least 2030. In addition, ANZ will no longer bank any new business customers with more than a 10% exposure to thermal coal, and will demand, quote, specific time-bound and public diversification strategies from existing customers with more than 50% thermal coal exposures. This plan has drawn a sharp rebuke from the Nationals' Agriculture Minister David Littleproud, calling for a boycott of the bank, and Deputy PM Michael McCormack saying the plan is virtual signalling that will hurt farmers. Commonwealth Bank, NAB and Westpac have also all made statements acknowledging the push to net zero emissions by 2050. The Royal Commission into our devastating Black Summer bushfires has recommended the introduction of a national state of emergency, an all-hazard emergency warning app, and the introduction of an aerial firefighting fleet. Critically, it says a new law should give the federal government the power to take action even if states and territories don't specifically ask for help, but only in clear, defined and limited circumstances. During the hearings, the Commission heard that smoke from the blazes killed an estimated 445 people and that there was confusion around whether it was safe to go outside and when it was safe to go outside as well. The 80 recommendations also provide advice on the coordinations of levels of government during emergencies, warning systems for the public, firefighting resources, climate data, the roles of the ADF, and how charities and other groups can best respond in the wake of disasters. It also wants the federal government to continue to work with state and territory governments to develop minimum standards on what should be included on a bushfire warning app so that information on the warning system could be readily available. To sport now, and the NRL has backflipped on a decision not to play the national anthem before State of Origin games. The move to scrap Advance Australia fare ahead of next week's series opener was made by an independent commission on Wednesday following consultation with the chairman of New South Wales and Queensland rugby leagues. But after backlash from some online and comments from Prime Minister Scott Morrison, the decision was reversed. The PM later released a statement saying he welcomed the U-turn, saying it was the right thing to do. It would have been the first time in 40 years the national anthem had not been played before an Origin game. In the AFL, Hawthorn's triple premiership wingman Isaac Smith has joined rival club Geelong as a free agent. Smith, who turns 32 in December, had also been offered a 3-year deal by the Melbourne Demons, but ended up choosing the Cats' 2-year offer, in part for lifestyle reasons and an interest in living in the Geelong area. It was expected that the Hawks would receive little or no compensation for Smith, given his age and the fact that they are getting Kyle Hartigan, a free agent from Adelaide, which offsets the competition to Hawthorn. Hawks football boss Graham Wright did thank Smith for his contribution to the club in his 210 games, including his vital part in their three-peat premiership success from 2013 up until 2015. Before we go tonight, recapping our top story, and businesses reopened across Melbourne after the city's lockdown ended after more than 100 days. Normal life is slowly returning, and Melburnians have wasted no time getting out and about with massive queues seen at shopping centres. The state government says these changes will allow more than 6,000 retail stores, 1,000 beauty salons and 800 pubs to reopen, impacting more than 180,000 jobs. And that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. There's plenty more news on all our social media pages. Just search 6 News AU to find us. I will be back on Wednesday with our special US election coverage along with the entire team. Until then though, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.